Now, in a moment, I'm going to bring on Mr. Steve Werner. Okay. Steve is one of the top capital raisers in the world. I had him at an Arizona conference with 4,000 capital raisers, and he got voted in the top 2%. The reason is because Steve is really good at listening to investors and then just giving them what they want. We don't do any hard pressure sales or anything like that here. Like, we're literally just like, let's listen, let's understand, and let's try to match the right opportunity. The other reason is because we invest our personal cash in these deals. I would never go and promote something that I didn't put my money into. It doesn't make any sense. We invest our personal money alongside of your money. So if you're looking for operators like that, that's us. The other thing is that we can usually self-fund these deals. We don't have to have investor partners. And I think that that makes a big difference for people that are considering investing, like knowing that there's on the other side of the fence, the other team has something to lose. And we would have a lot to lose, probably a lot more than some would in the space, because our reputation is fantastic. We've got a 4.9 out of 5-star rating on all the review platforms. So I've been humbled by over $100 million worth of deals coming through our business, like humbled. And we get to manage these kind of resources for our clients. It's taken nearly 2 decades to get there. And I'm going to be brief with this. And this is important. Okay. Number one, you have to have disciplined acquisitions to do what we're doing. We submit over 100 offers to get one deal. Name a team that does that. We do. You have to have world-class operations. I know that when everything was going up, even the rookies looked good. They covered up their bad mistakes because it was going up so fast. Nowadays, you have to have world-class operations. Insurance costs are up. Interest rate costs are up. Like, you got to be tight with your efficiency on the ground. We do that here. I would put up our team against anybody in the country for operations. The last thing is market timing. This is a little bit of a God thing, or maybe a good luck thing if you want to call it that. But market timing does make a difference. And when you've got people like John Gray from Blackstone saying that this is the time, you might want to pay attention to it. If you'd like to explore investing with us, go to homeinvest.com to jump on there. Now I want to get ready for the main event. I need you to type in the chat here. I need you to welcome to the stage. And I know that Zoom doesn't have a stage, but this is a virtual stage. And the more you actively engage, the more you actively learn, the more you'll retain. Studies show that you retain 92% when you're actively engaged. You only retain 51% when you passively sit back. So if you want to get a good ROI on your time here, then please help me welcome to the stage Mr. Steve Werner. Woo!
What is going on, everybody? Welcome. Let me get this moved around so I can see everybody. Vera, good to see you. Nate, good to see you. I'm glad you are alive. You haven't blown away or fallen in the ocean or anything like that. Let's get you up here and get you spotlighted, and you are muted, just so you know. Nate, how are things down there in Florida?
Good. We're still 24 hours away. There's a 24-hour countdown happening right now. So all my fellow Floridians know what it's like stocking up on water, filling up the car with gas when there's a mile-long line at the gas station. But we're good. We're safe.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad to hear that you are safe, and my thoughts and prayers are definitely with you right now. I'm sure you'll be safe, and this will just be a blip on the radar, but still thinking about you. We've got a huge day, and you've had a busy day. Just so you guys know, we are celebrating. We raised a huge amount of money for a rock star deal, like probably the best deal that Nate and I have seen in the last couple of years. And we closed it in 2 weeks. Well, it's not closed. It's closing on Thursday. How did all that go today, Nate?
Yeah, it's still going. It's live in action. But yeah, just like Steve mentioned, we picked up a killer deal. We showed it to you guys here. We showed it to our internal investors. Then we showed it to everybody on this opportunity zone. And immediately, boom, it was 8 days full. So now we're closing it out. We close out on Thursday, God willing, this week.
Yeah, the hurricane has given us a few bumps here and there. We've run into some things, but we've been able to overcome all of them so far. Knock on wood. It is real estate. We will overcome. We'll figure it out. For all of you guys listening, you know that we always preach like having a killer off-market deal, a KOMD, is what makes the deal sing. And in this case, we filled it up in 8 days. Sue on here with us. Sue worked really hard. She has been taking calls pretty much nonstop. I've taken a few calls in there. Nate's even been taking a couple calls, sneaking them in. But the overwhelming response is because it is a killer off-market deal. We have got a killer show for you in store today. Speaking of killer, the first thing you guys might have seen what happened with rates on Friday. We saw a small bump. We're going to be talking about that. Have we already seen the lowest rate of the year? I don't know, Nate. I know you're going to weigh in on that one. We're going to be talking about what's going on with Americans right now. Are they buying? Are they selling? Where is the numbers that I've seen is more than 60% of the market is doing one particular thing right now, and it's not selling. We're going to be talking about insurance in Florida. Nate, did you see that article?
Oh, I did. Yeah, I'm living it.
We're going to be talking about that. There's some things changing for our people in Florida. We've got a few other news pieces to touch on there. It's going to be a great show for you. We're also going to be talking about the deals that we have upcoming in our pipeline. If you missed the Barksdale deal, that is all right. We've always got new deals around the corner, although that deal was the deal of the year, probably. Anything I missed in there, Nate? Anything you're excited to talk about today?
Yeah, those that are looking for a massive tax break, like put in money into something and get a bunch of money off of your taxes and then get cash flow for life, then you'll want to pay attention to today's offer. So we'll talk about that a little bit later, but if you are looking for massive tax savings, I got something exciting to talk about.
Awesome. Well, we will be jumping into that here in just a second. But Nate, how do we start everything here at Home Invest?
Let's say a quick word, guys. Dear Lord, thank you for this opportunity to come in the midst of this nation going through a little bit of turmoil. We had a hurricane rip through. There's another one coming, and we just ask that you're with the families that need the most right now. The families that maybe are without a house, without power, without proper shelter and everything that they need. Just be with them, give them comfort, and let some of the supplies that people are sending break through the lines to get to them. And we ask that you give protection for everyone else that needs it during the storm over the next 48 hours. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Amen. All right. So, Nate, you just teased a little bit about huge tax savings. What do we have coming online for people?
Yeah, so it's really simple. 2 years ago, we bought this property that the IRS said we get something called accelerated depreciation. Fancy name, another lingo term is called passive losses. But we bought this property in Louisville, Kentucky, and we hired a tax specialist to go out and take a look at it. And they came back and they said, you know what? Based on what we're seeing right here, you guys get $978,000 off on your taxes. And I'm looking at that and I'm like, okay, how does that work? And we broke down the whole thing. Anyways, what they did is they gave us something that the government calls as passive losses. It's kind of like a tax credit, but you can't really call it a tax credit because it's not. But I got a 10-year-old boy and that's how he understands it. I always say, hey, when you buy real estate, the government gives you these tax credits. So with that $978,000, myself and partners got to use that to offset our ordinary income. Because of the way that we file our taxes, we do it this specific way that our CPA tells us to do it. We meet all the qualifications and we get massive tax savings. Most Americans don't realize that they're eligible for the same thing. Anybody in America can do it. You don't have to have a special license or anything like that. You just have to meet the requirements that the IRS has in order to pick up these tax benefits. If you are someone that you're starting to look, it's October now, and you're like, you know what? I'm starting to realize that I'm going to get taxed pretty heavily, then you might want to check out what real estate can do for you. We've got one deal. I don't know that we'll have another one this year that has this much tax benefits, but we have one deal, very beautiful, cash flowing, brick building, bringing in a lot of rent right now. We already own it. It's already stabilized. It's perfect, but it's kicking off a massive amount of these tax credits for people that know how to get in there and take them. If you'd like to explore that, then reach out to us. If we could drop the link in the chat to book a call with our partner Sue or our partner Steve, who you see right here, or Doug's on here as well, then jump on with us and we'll talk to you about that. So if you're looking for massive tax savings and you'd like to invest in real estate at the same time, you could invest with us, pick up cash flow from the building, and get massive tax savings. So we'll jump on the line. We'll talk to you about that.
Awesome. Sue and Doug had dropped their links in the chat. You can click the top link. That will get you on with me or Sue. The bottom link will get you on with Doug. Any of us would be happy to talk to you, answer any of the questions that you had. This isn't a sales call. It is more just us getting to know you, talk to you about the deal, see if it's a great fit for you, let you get to know us a little bit. That's the whole point of booking a call. We want to help you guys however we can, whether that means bringing you into one of our deals or helping you with another deal. We are here to help you overall. All right, that's going to move us into the news segment, and we've got some news for you today. So I'm going to put this first one up. There we go. So the jobs report came out last week, and it actually pushed mortgage rates up. This is not necessarily what was expected to happen. It actually raised mortgage rates by more than they were expecting. And when it pushed them up, it immediately froze the market. There was a lot going on with refinances, just because the rate had come down a little bit. If you remember a couple weeks ago when we were on here, we talked about the fact that people had bought houses using the 6.5% to 7% rate, and most of them, more than 80%, wish that they hadn't bought a house. Well, that when the rate came down a little bit, people started refinancing, but that froze when the jobs report came out. Nate, what's your take on this?
Yeah, this was to be expected to a T. You guys have probably heard the old adage, buy on the rumors and sell once it's public knowledge. They use that in stocks. You know, you start to hear companies chirping about things and there's rumors. Those are the times to buy, and then you sell once it becomes public knowledge. The same thing applies with rates. The Federal Reserve was kind of having rumors whispered that they're going to lower rates. Yeah, it's looking like healthy job reports. We can lower rates. We're killing inflation. We can lower rates. And there were whispers of it leading up to the Federal Reserve's actual announcement. So the market started to price that in. The market came down. You could get it cheaper. The day before the Federal Reserve opened its mouth about lowering rates, you could actually get a cheaper mortgage rate than the day after the Federal Reserve made it public. So those rumors were circling out there for a few weeks ahead of time. That was the time to lock into a mortgage. After he let it out of the bag, then that's kind of it's already a sunset on that window. So trade on the rumors.
So Nate, now that rates have come up just a little bit, what do you think? Are they going to come back down? You think they're going to stay up with things that are going on in politics right now? I mean, we're headed into November. What do you think?
I think that the Fed has enormous pressure to lower the rates at least one more time. They're probably going to do it this year and next year, quarter point each time they come back together. My suspicion is, even though the jobs report still looks healthy, they're going to keep lowering rates. And the reason is that even though jobs looks healthy right now, I want to remind everyone what happened back in 2007 when the jobs looked healthy as well. By 2008, jobs did not look healthy at all. We went from a 4% unemployment rate to an 11% unemployment rate in some areas of the country in about a year, maybe 14 months. It was a wild swing. So even though things on the surface look like they're really strong and solid and steady, I wouldn't be surprised if that starts to tick up really fast. So I think that the Federal Reserve's only defense to that is to take down the rates.
Okay. So we might see the rates come down before the end of the year. Would you hold out right now?
I think most certainly rates will come down at least one more time before the end of the year. And I think next year we'll really start to see them have to lower.
Yeah, I think we're going to see pressure for them to come down, but we'll see. Do you think it's going to matter depending who gets elected?
Not in the short term. I think in the long term. I mean, if whichever political candidate gets elected, if the economy starts to rally and people start to get optimistic about the future, then the Federal Reserve lowering rates wouldn't really make sense. Their job is to moderate, kind of keep things even keel, soft landings. And so I don't, if the economy starts rallying and taking off, then it wouldn't make sense for them to lower rates again.
Right. So it's kind of a catch-22 because we want the economy to get better, right? but we want rates to come down. So if you keep a sad face, it's just like a little kid when he's crying. If you just keep crying, the squeaky wheel gets the oil, right? All right.
Mhm.
The next news story that we've got kind of dovetails with that. Right now, more than half of borrowers, I was doing some research on this right before we came into this. I found a couple places where it had it at over 60% of America has rates at under 4%. They don't feel like moving. They don't feel like selling. They've been sitting on the sidelines waiting for the rates to drop low enough. There's somebody that I know here in Texas. They've had their house listed. They're going on 6 months. They've had almost no showings because people aren't moving. They don't know what to do. They went and bought another house. So they've got the double mortgage thing going on. They've got one mortgage at a high interest rate. They've got another mortgage that they're sitting there paying on that's vacant. They wish they would have waited. Now we've got the proof to back that up. Do you think these people are going to start moving anytime soon, Nate? You think they're going to hold on? What do you think is going to happen?
So I think they're going to sit, Steve, that scenario you just described. If you're looking for a house right now, Steve, that's the house for you to go buy, subject to their existing loan, because you'll be bailing them out and you'll be scooping up a low interest rate loan. So now is the time for that. But I think we're going to see a lot of standstill. If you go deeper on that article, maybe you can scroll down a little bit to the numbers, Steve. It shows the percentage breakdown of how many people have a rate that's sub 4%. How many have a rate that's sub 5%? You're talking a quarter of Americans have sub, what is that, 6%, 4% right now, 34%?
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of people that don't have a good reason to leave. I know the same is true for my wife and I. Like, why would I want to go out and take a high interest rate loan and then have to, because the payment goes up so much, I'd have to downsize in housing to buy something for the same payment. It just doesn't make any sense. So for a lot of Americans out there, they're thinking the same thing. Why would I want to downsize my life when I've got a good rate right now?
Well, that's Nate. You're correct. And you touched on where I was going to go with this. This is if you are looking, if you're an investor, I know we got some investors in here. I saw Kate on here, and I'm pretty sure we got a couple others floating around. If you're looking for an investment, this is the place that you can find those. If you've seen a house that's been for sale for a long time, that's a good place to make a subject to or an owner finance type offer to. If you know of somebody that has been waiting to list their house, they're probably getting pretty impatient by this point. You might be able to go in and make them an offer where you take over the payments so that they can go move. This is something that we talked about when we were doing the 3-day events. We would talk about this all the time. It's about finding the motivated sellers. And there are a lot of people that are motivated right now and want to move. They want to get their house up. They just they feel locked in. But if you can get them, if you can be creative and move some stuff around. I know Jared did this Jared found, it was a series of 6 or 7 duplexes and triplexes that the guy wanted to move. And he was willing to work with Jared just because he felt locked in by his mortgage rates. But then Jared came along and did an owner financing creative deal. So they are definitely out there for you. Any tips that you would offer people on that, Nate? I know we can talk for days.
Oh, for owner finance deals?
Yeah.
Yeah, the red flag is if you see someone listed for sale and for rent at the same time. For sale means that they want to sell. For rent means that they're open to monthly payments. If you see for sale in for rent, I can't even tell you how many of those that I bought because I knew the motivation was there and they would take monthly payments. They already advertised it by doing a for rent sign. So for sale and for rent, go after those, make your seller finance offers.
If you guys are interested in some seller financing stuff, we're actually going to go through the script a little bit later today. We've added in a 5-minute teaching section. Nate and I might actually role play the script for you. If you're excited about that, you can give me a thumbs up in the chat. We'll talk about that here in a little bit. Are we streaming this, Nate? That is my fault for not asking that earlier on.
Oh, we are. We're live on social.
Okay. If you guys are following us on social and you want that script, put the word script in there. We will send that to you. If you want information on the deal that we have for you, if you're looking for a huge tax break going into the end of the year, just put the word, what are we putting in there? Call? Deal?
Yeah.
What do you want
Yeah,
to put,
that
Nate?
works. CALL call.
Call. Put call in the chat and we will reach out to you. All right. Next one up, Nate. This one's right in your backyard. I would love to hear your thoughts on this. So, insurance cuts over 600 policies. They're moving into the private sector. Nate, unpack this one for us a little bit.
Yeah, so what they're talking about is citizens insurance. In Florida, Florida has been a state that's been ravaged by natural disaster, hurricanes specifically. And at one point back in 2004, the Florida legislature came along and said, you know what, we got to help our Floridians because all the insurance companies, they either charge too much or they pack up and they leave town. So they came up with something that's a state-backed or state-run insurance company called Citizens. And it's just meant to be there for people that cannot get insurance. So what happens is that 2004 comes out and there's a few people that get on it. And then the next thing you know, a hurricane comes through and a private insurance company folds up. And then Citizens ends up picking up that book of business. Since 2 years ago, at least, Citizens' book of business has gotten way too big. It's now become like one of the major insurers of the state of Florida. And that's not a good thing because that's state-backed tax dollars. So at this point, what Citizens has been trying to do is push people to the private market. They've been actually going out and playing matchmaker. They've been bringing in private insurance companies and saying, hey, you take these policies right here. And they're pushing people off of the Citizens government-backed insurance and into the private market sector for insurance. For the state of Florida, frankly speaking, Steve, it's the only viable option that they can do. They are not, like, anytime that government gets into the private sector, there's usually a lot of learning curves that it goes through to try to figure out that business. And unfortunately, what that would mean is that if they lose money, which in a big hurricane like the one that's brewing right now, it probably means the state of Florida is going to lose a lot of money. And then that's going to end up turning into tax dollars that Floridians have to pay. I'm much more for them going private sector. They should be pushing more private companies to come into the state of Florida.
Well, so that's the catch-22 that I hear, right, Nate? Like, they're on Citizens because they can't find private insurance because the private insurance is all pulled out of Florida or the rates are so high. Can you explain to me a little bit? I don't live in Florida. Can Citizens force you off if there's a policy, but it's twice as much?
That's a good question. I don't know their parameters, but I do know this. Like, the insurance market is difficult, but not impossible. It's like if you have to go to the DMV to get your driver's license and sit there for 3 hours, you'll go to the DMV and you'll get your driver's license, even though it's painful. I have insurance for every single property that we've ever bought in the state of Florida. Has it been easy? No, it hasn't. But I've never once used the government's insurance plan of Citizens. I've found private insurance. It's never once been an easy thing. It's much easier in other states, but I shop until we figure it out. So at the end of the day, there are still options.
Yeah. What was meant to be a stopgap and something that was there to serve people that absolutely had no other out, it seems like it became the easy go-to for people. And it was tough a couple of years ago. And with what's happening tomorrow, it sounds like it might get a whole lot tougher. Do you know if they're going to stop taking people? Are they allowed to do that?
I've often wondered that. I don't know the parameters that the legislation wrote around that whole Citizens insurance. I'm not sure what it is. So maybe at some point, I've heard and have seen many estimates that it will go bankrupt if it continues to take people. So there's no other choice, really. They should maybe just convert it into a matchmaking service, a professional insurance matchmaker. I think that what Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida, really needs to do is lead us into a solution that attracts private insurance companies to the state of Florida. What would that look like? What could that look like? Instead, right now, insurance companies, after a big hurricane like this, they pack up and typically leave. What would make it more exciting for an insurer to stick around long term?
That is something that he should definitely put some time and energy into. I know they've been calling for that for years in Florida, and nobody has really come up with a good solution. Nate, you have any political aspirations?
No, I don't. I served in politics back in university, and that was enough of a stint for me.
Yeah, I hear you. I totally understand. It's a tough problem to solve. Well, the next one that we got, Nate, I wanted to put something in here, little political for you. We've got a hedge fund manager here that is predicting a market crash if Harris wins. You read through this. What's your take? Do you agree? Disagree?
So you could flip a coin on a lot of this. A lot of it's hypothetical. A lot of people will say, no, statistically speaking, when an incumbent is reelected, then usually there's some calmness to the market. Usually it increases. And then you could argue, well, this isn't an incumbent president. This is a vice president taking the incumbent seat. So you could flip a coin on any of this back and forth. I do believe that there's been more uncertainty in the air for the last 8 weeks. And the big shift was switching hats from Biden to Harris. And ever since that shift happened, I have received more phone calls from concerned investors than at any point in the last decade that I remember. Steve, you take a lot of calls with our investors too. Like, one of the things that I keep hearing over and over again, just over the last 8 weeks, it wasn't this way before that, but it was, I'm worried about the outcome of the election. I want to sit tight and just see who wins. And the only fundamental change has been switching from Biden over to Harris. So I think there's a lot more nervousness right now. And when people are nervous, markets tend to shift. So I think that hedge fund manager could be right.
Yeah, I think he could be. I mean, there's two things in here. The first one is raising corporate tax from 21 to 28%. That's a pretty healthy raise. I mean, corporate tax can probably take a little bit there. I tend to favor more Republican stance of tax them less, have them create more jobs. But I can understand we have things that we need to pay for. But the capital gains tax from 20% to 39%, I think, is one of the reasons that you go out and you work so hard and you're willing to invest things is because you want to make money. And taxing people on capital gains seems like basically doubling the tax on capital gains seems crazy to me. The other one down here, the long-term capital gains tax, this is only going to hurt people that are building family wealth. This doesn't hurt the ultra wealthy because they're not making their money the way that through capital gains. They're actually building the stock portfolio and borrowing against it. They're not going to pay any tax. Who this is going to hurt is people like us, and the common person that is trying to invest their money. I don't think that it's necessarily a great move. I don't know.
I get a notification every time a transaction comes on my credit card. And the one that stands out to me because it's a fraud alert is I get a notification that someone's charging me from Ireland every month. And so I always pause to look at it, like, what the heck, who's charging me from Ireland? And it's Google. We pay for a lot of Google services, Gmail and all that kind of stuff, Google Voice, whatever. But Google moved its headquarters. I know they still have a physical office in Silicon Valley, but their corporate headquarters, or whatever you want to call it, moved to Ireland. Now, why? Why would Google move to Ireland? Well, because at one point in history, it was probably a decade ago or when they did it, they did not want to get beat over the head with these corporate taxes. And that's what smart companies do. So I totally understand where this hedge fund manager is coming from, and he's probably right. If we do see tax implementation like this, you're going to see more Googles say, you know what? I don't have to pay this. I can move this over to Ireland. I can move this over to Dubai. Dubai has one of the best corporate tax structures in the world right now. They're basically blessing the ground for companies to come in and move in. They'll kiss your feet as you walk in the front door, and it's working for them. They're booming. So I do think that this hedge fund manager could be absolutely right. We'll see a shake in the market because of the uncertainty that it could cause.
Yeah, I do think it might. The other piece of this is you see proposed everywhere here. I think that it will just cause a huge stalemate. I could be wrong. I don't have a crystal ball. I tend to be pretty neutral in my political leanings, but I'm not excited about any of these huge tax increases. I don't think that it's a good move. I don't think that it's good for me personally, but I also don't think it's good for the economy. I think it's actually going to hurt the economy way more than help it. But those are my thoughts. That's what we're here to discuss. But if you want to save on your taxes, we've got an amazing deal for you. Nate, you want to run through our tax savings deal one more time? We are
That
coming
was
up.
Did you guys see that transition? Did you guys see that? He's good. Steve is good. He just transitioned.
No more
us right
taxes. We have the
No more
solution
taxes.
for you.
Yeah. Legally eliminate your taxes. So you guys see this beautiful aerial. There's these 8 buildings right here. Okay. 8 buildings, multifamily housing in a suburb called Georgetown. Now you may have seen this deal before. We closed on it. We own it. We're operating it. We're collecting cash flow like crazy on it. We've just decided that we're going to open up some of it for people that want tax breaks. And there is a benefit for us. We make money when we sell some of it. So there's a two sides to the coin. Number one, if someone wants to come in and enjoy the benefits of passive income, cash flow coming in every single quarter to you, we collect it monthly and we distribute it every quarter, then this property could be one for you. But moreover than that, as you're going through tax planning, if you're having conversations with your CPA right now, and if you're not talking to your CPA, you probably should be, it's October already, about year-end planning. If your CPA says, hey, you probably should have got some extra tax credits along the way. You probably should have got some, they call it accelerated depreciation for your tax planning, then this might be the deal for you. It's a beautiful, stabilized asset in one of the best suburbs of Kentucky called Georgetown. You got a Toyota plant just down the street. You got multi-million-dollar horse farms on either side of this community. This is a excellent, excellent property, and it's full of tax benefits. If tax benefits are intriguing to you, then use one of the links that you see to book a call. If you don't see a link because you're following us somewhere on social, just type call, C-A-L-L, in the comments, and our team will hook you up with that link. Jump on for 15 minutes. We'll explore it with you. We'll give you the rundown and we'll tell you how tax breaks work when you invest in real estate the right way.
Read my lips. No new taxes as long as you invest in our deal. There's a big asterisk there, and that's for the Reagan fans. I don't know. Nate, were you remember Ronald Reagan?
Well, I was a kid. I was a little kid at the time, but I think that there's a movie out on Reagan. I think
It
there's a new
is
movie
coming out. Maybe that's more Sue. I was a kid. I wasn't a little kid. I think I was, gosh, I was in 8th grade, 7th grade during Reagan years. So I remember it a little bit more. All right. I just thought that would be a fun joke, but I think I'm aging myself. I didn't see anybody laugh. We have a few questions in the chat. So the first one is, do you have to be accredited to invest in this? Yes, you do. This is for accredited investors. If you need the definition around that, accredited means you either make $200,000 a year singly, $300,000 a year jointly, or you have more than $1 million in net worth, not including your primary residence. We don't make those rules. We just have to follow them. Sue put that in the chat. That is true. We do follow the rules because that is the government and they tell us that we have to. We don't make those rules up. That is just the rule that we have to abide by. So we'd have to invest through our Roth IRA to work around this. I'm not sure where that question came in, but Chris, if you want to post that, happy to answer it. Chris Lavin got the joke. Says we're making him feel old. Chris, you are the youngest among us in your mind. Just full of the one-liners today. I don't know. All right. So teaching. We're going to move into teaching a little bit. We touched on owner financing a little bit earlier. There are some great owner finance deals out there. The market is full of people who have been hanging on waiting to sell. And if you can come in and make their day, they would be willing to move the properties. So what is the script? Nate, we don't have to go through the whole Kong story, but there was a certain script that you use where most people go wrong. Where do most people go wrong when they try to do a seller finance deal?
I'm going to flip this question out to everybody. Just think about this for a second. You're sitting down with a seller of any size piece of real estate, or you're talking to them on the phone. What's one of the first questions they're going to ask you? Think about that for a second. Plant that seed in your mind. You're sitting down with the seller, you're talking to them on the phone. What's one of the first questions they're going to ask you? And I'll give you the spoiler alert. It's usually on price. How much are you going to pay me? What are you able to pay me? What's your offer going to be? Some version of that is going to come up in the first couple of minutes, almost always. And where Steve's trying to teach you guys this, he's saying, hey, where do people go wrong? This is the bottom line on this. People go wrong as soon as they open their mouth and they start talking about numbers. They kill it. If you're talking about numbers in the first 3 minutes of a conversation with somebody on their property, that's kind of like going on a first date with someone in proposing. That'd be a big no-no, right? Could you imagine if, with my wife, Jennifer, if I would have said, hey, will you marry me the first time that I went out with her? Be a big no-no. Same thing with seller financing. In the first minute or two, you need to understand the situation. The situation is more important than the number. So we can start with that basis.
So the situation is always more important than the number. But what happens is you hear the seller, they say, well, you're talking to them on the phone, usually before you get in FaceTime with them. And they say, well, what do you think you could pay me for it? Or do you think you can pay me Zillow price for it? I want what Zillow says. Can you pay me full price for it? Nate, what's the answer to that question?
Yeah, could you pay me Zillow price or full price? That's kind of what you're throwing at me.
Yeah.
So I would say, I don't know yet. Is it cool if I ask you a handful of questions so I can understand more about the property and more about the situation, and then we can get to that answer?
So Nate, go ahead.
You're good.
I was going to say what Nate just did is turn that around to the seller. And now we're going to talk about the situation. It's not just about the house and the plumbing and the electrical and the roof. You want to actually get to what their situation is. What are they trying to do? Why are they selling the property? Because when you learn why they're selling, then you can learn, do they need cash right now? Do they just need somebody to take over the payment? That's the question that you're trying to get to, right?
Yeah. Rose threw it in the chat. She nailed it. She said, we have to know what their triggers are. What does triggers mean? Why do they want to sell? What are their hot buttons? Why is this important? I walked a beautiful, almost $1 million estate in the mountains of South America. My wife and I are seeing this property and we're talking with the seller, Gabriel. And I asked Gabriel, hey, Gabriel, why are you selling? He said, well, I inherited this from my mom. As kids, we came up here all the time on the weekends. This was like our weekend place. And now mom died. I have a different weekend place that's on the other side of town. I can't maintain two, so I'm selling it. I'm like, oh, I got it. So you really love this place? She said, yeah, I absolutely love this place. And I said, okay, well, would you ever consider, rather than you just selling it outright, would you ever consider selling it to someone and receiving monthly payments on this? And you get to keep this as a backup. If for some reason that person defaults on monthly payments, you can keep this place. Would you ever consider that? And then it opened up this whole dialogue on seller financing. The only reason that door was open is because I understood what his real motivation was. It wasn't just to get the cash. It wasn't to run to the stock market and put the money in on some fancy stock. It wasn't about that at all. So understanding what their triggers are, I like how Rose put that.
So the next piece to this is the piece that I always messed up. So I'd have a little bit of conversation. This is what I messed up in 2002, but now I know how to do a whole lot better. I would always have a little bit of conversation, and then I would just blurt out something along the lines of like, hey, so are you interested in doing seller financing? You can imagine how that worked. My close rate was like 1 out of 25. What do you want to do? How do you transition into the seller financing piece? And there's a couple questions that you want to ask. Always ask questions. A really wise person once told me the person that is asking the questions is the person that's in control of the conversation, because you're controlling where the person thinks and what they say. So what are the questions that you want to ask? Nate, go ahead.
I just had this combo last week. So the lady's explaining to me that they're now ready to lower the price and they understand that it needs repairs. And so they're going to discount the price and let it go. And I said, well, what happens if you don't sell? And she kind of paused for a second and she said, well, we don't really want to do this, but if we have to, we'll rent it out. Oh, okay. So you're open to taking monthly payments for it if you have to. Well, yeah, we don't want to do that, but we would if we had to. So that's the question that I use to transition it. So what that opened up for me is now I understand that they're open to monthly payments. It's not their first choice, but it's a choice that's on the table for them.
So Nate just hinted at one of the questions. He gave you one. The other questions that I just ask are, well, have you thought about renting it? And you might say, if the little voice in your head just said, well, I don't want them to rent it. That's why you're asking them if they've thought about renting it, because I guarantee that they have thought about it. Nate just gave you the perfect example. Well, we don't really want to, but if we absolutely had to, we would. Does that sound painful? The next question might be, well, why haven't you listed it with a realtor? We flat out had somebody tell us last December, I hate realtors. I don't want to deal with a realtor. I know I'm going to make a little bit less going with you guys, but I don't want to ever deal with a realtor. He like jumped out of his skin to tell us that. You remember that, Nate?
Yeah.
To me, that's okay, great. They are the ones giving you the reasons. If you instead try to tell them, hey, you don't want to list this with a realtor, immediately they are going to put up their hands and give you some pushback, even if they don't want to list it with a realtor. It has to be their idea. So the questions that you want to ask is, what happens if you don't sell it? Have you thought about listing with a realtor? Have you thought about renting it? Okay. Now they're looking to you for a solution. And this is where you can say, well, we might be able, instead of saying seller financing, because people have a lot of negativity usually around that term, you can say, well, what would happen if I just took over the payments, the taxes, the insurance, and made all of the payments and got you the money that you wanted somewhere down the line a little bit? Would that help you? Now, notice how I phrased that. Would that help you? What are they going to say? No? Of course that would help them. It might not be their ideal situation, but it gets them to say yes. And the first yes is the key to the second yes, is the key to the third yes, and that's where you get there. Nate, anything to add?
This market right now, like we started this whole show by talking about how interest rates everyone expected them to go down on the Fed's announcements of the Federal Reserve lowering their rates. Everyone thought the market rate would come down, but what happened is the inverse. Rates went up a little bit. I know it seems funny. It seems complicated. Why would the Federal Reserve's rate going down make market go up? It's more complicated than I can explain it this second, but we started the call there. When you are in an environment like this, where rates are sticking around at annoyingly high rates, this is the perfect time to buy owner finance properties. Tons of them are available right now because the sellers can't get buyers. If you guys have paid attention at all to the market, it is slow out there. There's a lot of realtors that are resigning right now because it's so slow out there. This is the time for you to go pick up owner finance properties right now.
Awesome. All right. That's going to be what we've got for you today. If you do want a break on your taxes, I know a lot of business owners might have extended. You might have some tax bills coming due right now. You also might be looking towards the end of the year and figuring out, what can I do to get some tax breaks? We do have a deal on the table right now that has phenomenal tax incentives attached to us. If you want to hear about that from myself or from Sue, who is on here, or Doug, any of us would be happy to book a call with you. The link is in the chat. Sue, Doug, if you guys want to drop those one more time in the chat for us, you can book a call with us there. We would love to chat with you about these. It's not a sales call. It's just us getting to know you, laying out what we can and can't do if you're accredited or non-accredited. We're also happy to help you however we can. If you're new to our world, if this is the first time you've been exposed to Nate and myself, our business is based on Matthew 25, which is being a great steward of what God has given you. And that's what we're here to do. We're here to help you be great stewards of the things that God has given you. Anything to add before we bounce out of here, Nate, and you hunker down for the storm?
No, just keep everybody in the state of Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, keep them all in your prayers. Tennessee as well. Keep them all in your thoughts and prayers. There's a lot going on in this world right now. And with another storm coming overhead, everyone could use the thoughts and prayers. Thank you, guys.
Absolutely. All right, guys, have a great week. And we will see you back here next Tuesday for our Opportunity Zone, where we go through the latest news headlines and what it means for you in your investing journey. Be great stewards of what God has given you. And we'll see you here next time. Have a good day, guys.